Right. So thank you for bringing together such a diverse panel, and I'm looking forward to. I've already heard views that are new, and I'm looking forward to hearing more as well as sharing my own. However, I would first like to congratulate Greek Greens on their upcoming Congress tomorrow. And as the Turkish Greens are a party like you that has recently been reestablished, we are looking forward to continuing dialogue, and we hope to build a stronger green movement both in the region, in both countries, and a stronger force for peace through our both parties. So about the issue at hand, the ongoing Turkey-Greece tension over both maritime boundaries and continental shelves, as well as oil exploration and gas exploration. The issue is not just an issue of maximalist and aggressive politics by the Erdogan government. It's neither an issue of Turkey trying to push a tough negotiating position on the Cyprus issue. If you had a different government, a center-right or center-left government in Turkey and a center-left or center-right government in Greece, the same nation-state issues would still be going on. It's a matter of nation-states pushing to define maritime sovereignty beyond anything else. The hydrocarbons issue is as much a tool as it is an economic concern for the Erdogan government here. And if you had somebody else, sure, it may be less tense, more civil, but you would still have the ongoing issues and Turkey trying to define its maritime zones through logistic activity. As the Greens in Turkey, we see that the way to overcome this is not through just nation-state sovereignty, but we must propose ways out of nation-state sovereignty over the waters of the Mediterranean where possible, and resolve differences through constructive dialogue where we can't get out of nation-state sovereignty contexts. So we have a common sea, and for millennia we've been traveling, trading, mixing on it. Even before there was writing, we had people mixing in the sea, and it has provided us with livelihood for millennia, and it also lives itself. It's a living but sadly dying biosphere, and it has, as a living being, as a living biosphere, its own rights, and we should start discussing the rights of nature and the rights of the Mediterranean as a living being. That is a long-term or medium-term discussion that the Greens must propose. Further, as I laid the context, it's a commons, a global commons rather than the backyard of this state or that state. And any green policy proposal for the solution of the Mediterranean, Eastern Mediterranean and Aegean tensions between Greece and Turkey and Cyprus should move from this idea of the sea being a commons rather than defining exclusive economic zones or continental shelves. And the way that I find as a responsible but realizable solution that we may propose is to approach it through the Barcelona Convention as a framework. It's a convention of 7 different treaties that are all aimed at protecting nature around the Mediterranean basin, and it includes the establishment of protection zones of protective natural zones. So the Barcelona Convention is out there as a model that we can build on, and similar to the European project, which is built on several treaties, through building closer ties and trust through treaties, we can both diminish the sovereignty of nation states, increase common sovereignty over the Mediterranean where we can, do this through treaties and through shared responsibility, and at the same time protect the sea and establish definite rules, such as we will all sign under not exploiting fossil resources, or we will make huge areas that are currently exclusive economic zones and zones of contestation between different countries as biospheric protection zones. And this will be a way out of the madness that the 19th century nationalism and early 20th century nationalism has locked us into. It is a bold plan, I know, but it is a stance for peace, and I hope it's a stance that Greens would hopefully unite behind. Of course, this is a long-term or a medium-term proposal, and for Greece and Turkey, this perspective of resolving continental shelf and maritime boundary issues cannot wait that long. We have to also start by decreasing tension, and as the latest EU Council minutes or declaration says, this is indeed where the EU also finds it reasonable for parties to start. In order for anything to happen in terms of negotiations, the first thing that has to happen is for, yes, Turkey to decrease its aggressive and militaristic push in the Eastern Mediterranean as soon as possible. And such de-escalation has hopefully started. This may be followed by demilitarization of the Aegean Islands and of the Aegean coast, which is already mandated by treaty anyway. And further, the two countries can promise not to have military maneuvers, which will mean a lot in terms of establishing trust and an amicable environment of negotiation, after which we could turn back to finally where we think we left things off in the late 1990s and early 2000s, where we had reached a point with a timeline and a framework and a deadline for a negotiations for the maritime borders and flight information areas and so on. And this roadmap was laid out so that at the end of the process, we would go to either the International Court of Justice or another mediation body that the two sides agree upon. And this is the only way to solve the issues, perhaps starting from north, moving south to make things easier, is what many experts say. So that we actually can go beyond the conflictual, repetitive situation that we find ourselves in. But on the long run, the important thing is to go beyond the nation state as the actual solution. Yeah. If we ultimately have a peaceful feature where the Cyprus issue is peacefully negotiated and resolved in a bizonal, bicommunal way, Turkey moves along with its reforms and negotiates its problems with both Cyprus and Greece, and is up for EU membership. The whole question of national boundaries and maritime boundaries becomes an academic issue. So that is the way that Greens, I hope, will push.
Alidost, I hate to rush you, but if you can wrap up. Yeah.
I shall skip a bit. Turkey is economically at a place where it is dependent on Europe. It needs Europe as a market and as foreign investment. It is highly interconnected. So any discourse by the government is just that, rhetoric and discourse. And the important thing now is to bring it into the fold of institutional, multilateral, and liberal international relations. Therefore, I believe that the latest Council approach is a measured approach that should not be looked down on, and hopefully, together with the balancing of things with the US, it will bear fruit. The important thing here is to note that this is a deeply rooted relationship with legal, institutional, cultural aspects to it, and boiling it down to a securitized issue of just borders, military security, and economic relations will not do it justice, and hopefully an approach cognizant of this will facilitate Turkey walking down the right path, which the society is already pushing the government to do so. I have a lot more to say on climate issues. Let me just quote one statistic, which is that if only the Cypriot gas is allowed to flow into the European markets, that would be a 1/50th increase in the EU's carbon emissions, and it would blow the ceiling, which has already blown. Add to this Egypt and Israel's gas, and we're talking about 10 times more that, 1/5 more emissions, and we absolutely have no right to push that on upcoming generations, future generations, or the environment itself. Anyway, thank you for bearing with me.